Hello, good evening. Thanks for being with us tonight here on The Hill. I'm Blake Berman. This is The Hill on NewsNation. So those massive tariffs and a trade deal at stake. It's been 76 months since President Trump and Xi Jinping have met face to face. And that's about to change in mere hours.
I'm very optimistic. I am. And I know a little bit about what's going on because, we have been talking to them. We're not just walking into a meeting cold.
We'll show you what's at stake as the leaders of the two superpowers are set to meet. Plus, how the president connected that meeting to the ongoing droning of drug boats in the Caribbean. The president's former top man inside Venezuela. With us tonight here on The Hill. Also this evening, is the spread in the Big Apple getting smaller? The new numbers out on who will be New York City's next mayor. Is Cuomo catching up to Mamdani? Plus, are Brian Enton out on the road talking to voters ahead of next week's election? Why a race in Philadelphia doesn't show signs of any brotherly love. But first tonight here from The Hill, it is 6 o'clock in Washington this evening, 7 in the morning in Seoul, South Korea. Daybreak there as we are roughly 4 hours away from a meeting that is some 6 years in the making. President Trump set to sit down with the Chinese leader Xi Jinping. Both sides in recent weeks amping up the tough talk. But a sudden thawing in what the president recently described as a trade war. The United States suggesting there is a framework in place for a deal.
We've been talking a lot over the last month, and I think we're going to have something that's going to be very satisfactory to China and to us. I think it's going to be a very good meeting. I look forward to it. Tomorrow morning we meet.
Tomorrow morning is now, essentially. The president's starting his day, though, with a trade deal, as you heard there, in South Korea. South Korea saying the agreement there will lower the tariffs on Korean vehicles and parts to 15% in exchange for a $350 billion investment. That's the phrasing of all this. The South Korean president gifting President Trump with a replica of an ancient golden crown and a medal. That was part of the scene earlier today, a symbol of appreciation for strengthening ties between the two nations. But it is the big Trump-Xi meeting that has many in the East and West awaiting tonight. We begin with our Robert Sherman, who is live for us this evening in South Korea, where those two leaders are waking up this morning. It is daybreak there. The sun looks out. You can see a little smoke there in your breath. I guess it's chilly there, and the talks heat up, Robert.
Yeah, it is a chilly morning here in South Korea. The sun has risen on what is without question one of the most significant and consequential days of President Trump's new term in office. The two heads of state of the two most powerful economies in the world will be sitting down face to face after months of tense conversations, tariffs, retaliatory measures, all with the hopes of cutting a trade deal here today, with the president saying he feels confident one can get across the finish line. Take a listen.
I think we're going to have a deal. I think it'll be a good deal for both. And that's really a great result. That's better than fighting and going through all sorts of problems and, no reason for it.
There's a long docket list of items that are critical to this conversation. Rare earth minerals, that's a big one. Agriculture. You've heard a lot about soybeans. September was actually the first month since 2018 we didn't see any American soybeans sold to China. TikTok, significant, still unresolved. Shipping fees, things of that nature, tariffs at large. It's a long list of ground to cover. And there are major American companies that have significant stakes in the outcome of today's talks. NVIDIA, for example, just eclipsed a $5 trillion market cap here today. That is with a projection of no sales to China, which underscores exactly how tense the situation is between China and the U.S. They don't anticipate any sales to the Chinese market. If U.S. and China cut a deal today and the Chinese market opens up, many of these tech companies believe the American economy will get a big boost. Blake?
Whole lot of stake there. South Korea. Our Robert Sherman live on the ground there this morning for us, Robert. Thank you. Joining us now here on the Hill, Congressman Carlos Jimenez, Republican from Florida, also one of the folks, members of Congress, who sits on the China Select Committee, with us live tonight. Once again, Congressman, thanks for being here. You heard Robert Sherman there sort of lay out both sides. It seems like there's this China will back off the chokehold of rare earths. The president wants to cut down on fentanyl, of course, the precursor chemicals. It looks like China's going to buy some soybeans. We don't know the details or how big, and we'll get that in a few hours here. But where does this sit with you tonight?
Well, look, what I hope is that they do cut some kind of deal, always with the eye of the United States, assuring that we onshore or nearshore those things that are critical to our security. Rare earth minerals are one of them. And yeah, we're going to need some from China for a while, but we need to make sure that our supply is China-proof. And so, yeah, I do expect some kind of a deal, but I also, with the understanding that China, without a doubt, is our greatest and biggest adversary in the world and our greatest threat to our national security. While we will continue to trade, there are things that we need to decouple from China in order to assure our national security.
Do you trust them? Like if there is a deal
No.
and we hear Xi say,
No.
we're going to do this, you don't trust them?
No, I don't trust them at all.
So why should we take tonight?
As far as I can throw.
I don't want to use. So we're going to probably get like some sort of a framework of a deal. I guess if they shouldn't be trusted, then how should it be viewed?
Well, I mean, it should be viewed that whatever the deal that we cut, it has to be verified. But I don't trust them one bit. And so go into it knowing that they're going to try to deceive you. They're going to try to give you what they, to put their best face forward, but also knowing and be wide awake to the fact that behind the scenes they're probably going to try to deceive us and get around whatever measure that we put in place. That's why we need to decouple from them as quickly as we can on those things that are critical to our national security. I think the president understands that. But also, how do we start this decoupling without tearing apart the fabric of our economy? I mean, we're so interwoven right now, both of us, by the way, both them and us, that we got to do this very carefully. But on those things, we need to start decoupling. They outproduce on ships 250 to 1. Steel production, rare earths, the processing of those rare earths, that they have something like 95% of the world market.
They're
we
the
need to
power
diversify.
There,
That's correct. Then we need to diversify that and bring it onshore or nearshore it with our allies. Speaking
of the shores, I mentioned to our audience here on NewsNation or those listening to us on Sirius XM that you're on that bipartisan committee. Here's what you said earlier this year in a hearing, and then I want to pick it up on the other side.
Okay.
The PRC's expanding presence in Latin America has also exacerbated the illicit flow of goods, including precursor chemicals used to manufacture fentanyl. These chemicals fuel drug production and trafficking networks run by the cartels that send deadly narcotics into American communities. The CCP is complicit in this crisis.
So it seems like the president might peel back this tariff that was put in place on fentanyl. If that's indeed the case and we hear that there's some sort of an arrangement, what do you expect to happen next out of China?
Look, the Chinese, the CCP is directly responsible for the deaths of hundreds of thousands of Americans. Make no mistake about it. The precursor chemicals that they produce 97% of the precursor chemicals that are necessary for fentanyl. Now, here's the kick. The sale of those precursor chemicals in China is prohibited. It's against the law. But the Chinese Communist Party actually incentivizes companies to produce those chemicals for export. Now, those chemicals are only used for fentanyl. And so, the Chinese Communist Party has been guilty of and is complicit in the murder, I believe, of hundreds of thousands of American citizens. That's why I take everything that they say with a grain of salt. That's why we need to start decoupling from from the CCP, because they're not our friend. They want to be the dominant economic and military power by 2049 and impose their will on the rest of the world and also infringe on our liberties here in the United States. As you can tell, I'm no fan of the CCP.
I can hear it loud and clear. He is a member of the Select Committee, Congressman Carlos Jimenez, with us tonight here on the Hill. And look, we'll see what this deal may or may not look like and what the two sides reveal just a few hours from now. Congressman, thank you. We'll see you again soon.
Okay, thank you. Have a great day or night.
You as well. All right. In the lead up to the meeting, the president was actually caught on a hot mic saying how long he thinks he'll spend with Xi.
I'm meeting with President Xi tomorrow morning. Yeah. And then I go on a 3-hour meeting, 3-4 hours.
34 hours, huh? How about that? Several hours, the center of the president's trip to Asia, and an important step, of course, in his administration, the negotiations leading up to this point, taking months. But keep this in mind. In the first Trump term, it took years to arrive at a framework deal with China. With me now, Chris Steyerwalt, host of the Hill Sunday Senior Fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. Professor?
You get choked up talking about trade policy. It gets you. I feel it.
The more you talk, the more I get to clear my throat. Excuse me to all of you at home. I find it fascinating. Not fascinating, but sort of the moment that Trump is in right now. I had one of the top trade advisors to Trump in the first administration on the show a while ago, and he said to me, look, when we put $50 billion on them in the first term, they didn't blink. They didn't care. When they went deeper and deeper and harder, that's what brought them to the table. And I think the tariffs that Trump has put on China this go around kind of led to this moment to where it sped everything up, no matter what you think about the tariffs, good or bad.
Well, let's take Trump out of it. The trend line in the United States in the second and third decade of the 21st century is what? Tough on China. That's for domestic political consumption in the United States, and it also just represents the reality that as China has grown and grown and grown, that the United States has to confront China in a different way. Trump won, slaps a bunch of tariffs on. Joe Biden comes in.
Kept them all on.
He didn't just keep them on.
He kept them going.
He increased on key things because Joe Biden wasn't going to be out anti-China'd by Donald Trump.
Right.
So Donald Trump comes in and he says, I'm not going to be out tariff-manned by Joe Biden, and I'm going to slap even more tariffs onto China, and I'm going to do it. So the question isn't whether they can get a deal. The question is, what will we have gotten for 3 presidential terms worth of twisting the Chinese dragon's tail?
So what's at stake for Trump tonight?
Well,
this morning, however you want to
So if the trade-off ends up being that we're going to let China have access to some of our most sophisticated chips of our U.S. producers, highest-end chips that are right at the cutting edge of all of this AI technology, in exchange for China buying soybeans that they were buying before, then the Trump-Biden-Trump odyssey into China sounds like we probably got rolled. There's other stuff that's going to happen here, and as with Donald Trump, everything's always on the table. He can always make a different kind of deal. But if this ends up being that they'll buy soybeans and we'll give them microchips, then we've been on a little bit of a bad run.
180,000 metric tons of soybeans were purchased in advance of this meeting, a little bit of goodwill from China, but they bought in the neighborhood of 25 million metric tons last year. So you're talking about less than 1%. And of course, all of this comes as they basically shut off soybean purchases in the last 5 months.
And Congressman Jimenez talks about us decoupling from China. China's been decoupling from us. And as they've been moving the agricultural purchases to other countries, they're building sustainable markets in those places to provide them in the future.
Chris Steyerwalt, catch you later in the show.
We'll do it.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Still to come here on the Hill, other side of the break. What the president said about the strikes on drug boats near Venezuela. What oil may have to do with the end game there. Plus, did we just get a sneak preview of the next Republican ticket? What the president said about a third term today? And how about this from J.D. Vance?
Marco is my best friend in the administration. He and I work a lot together.
Right.
And we really do, I think, a lot of the good work that we've been able to do as an administration is because we're all able to work together.
Steyerwalt's over here chuckling with me if you can't hear him. Next week's elections right around the corner, which means Brian Enton, his acclaimed Drive the Vote series, is back. I'm sitting next to Steyerwalt. I'm talking to Enton. Life is good.
Yeah, this is fun, Blake. This is so fun. We're back in the RV again. We're driving across the country. We're talking to voters and Americans. We got our first story coming up next, Blake.
All right, welcome to Washington. I'm Blake Berman. I thank you for being with us. Enton, other side, 4 minutes. Day in many places. Several key races could be an indicator of where politics in this country just might be headed. There are tight races, for example, for governors in Virginia and New Jersey. We'll be talking about the New York City mayoral race later in the show, and out in California out west, an important vote there on whether the state should redistrict to favor Democrats to try to counter what happened in Texas. NewsNation has you covered. Our Brian Enton is driving across the country from Pennsylvania to Utah as part of his Drive in the Vote series to talk to American voters about the issues that matter to them. And Brian, you're on the RV. It looks fantastic. I think your driver there has his hands on 10 and 2, so good on him. What'd you find there in Philly?
Yeah, it's been interesting. You know, we just crossed over into Maryland. We were in Pennsylvania. We're going to be in West Virginia soon. We're on Highway 67. Henry's behind the wheel. It's actually rainy out right now. Not great weather, but it was beautiful earlier. The leaves are changing in this part of the country, so it's been great. Philly was so interesting, though. You mentioned that everybody's talking about New Jersey governor race and Virginia and the mayoral race in New York City, but what's happening in Philly is so fascinating because you've got a DA there, a district attorney, extremely progressive. You've got a former judge who left the bench to run against him who says crime is out of control. Take a look at this, Blake. This is known as America's largest open-air drug market, Philadelphia's Kensington neighborhood. We're walking around. It's immediately clear. Needles all over the ground here. Drugs and people on drugs are everywhere you look.
But we definitely need people to understand that we've already lost enough in the city. Change is definitely needed.
Change could come with the city's district attorney race next week.
This is John. He's been missing for 6 years.
Something community activist Roz Pichardo is watching closely. I first met Roz in 2022 when she was walking around Philly with a tourniquet to save gunshot victims.
The tourniquet, I just used one last Thursday. I was at the hair salon getting my hair done. There was a shooting. Food, snacks.
Things haven't really gotten better since then. Now far-left District Attorney Larry Krasner is being challenged by former Judge Pat Dugan. Krasner coming under fire recently for his handling of the Kata Scott murder, a young woman allegedly killed by a man Krasner previously allowed to get out of jail on a different kidnapping charge.
The person who was arrested, he had a previous history of kidnapping. No, I want him to be more for families of homicide victims and harsher sentences. Just get people arrested and charged properly.
Even Roz, who identifies as a staunch Democrat, is not happy about Krasner's history when it comes to prosecuting homicides, which is why Democrat DAs around the country will be watching Philly so closely on Tuesday. Are the days of progressive bail reform touting prosecutors numbered? Former Philly Sergeant Mark Fusetti says yes.
This is an ongoing issue with this office. It's been going on for years. The world's just getting to see it now because of this beautiful young woman that was taken away, just preventable.
So it really is going to be interesting to see what happens there, Blake, because that Kata Scott case has got a lot of people in Philly upset, a lot of Democrats upset who feel like their progressive DA mishandled that case and just has not been tough enough on crime. Blake?
One of the many interesting races all over the country. Where are you headed next, Brian?
Yeah, so how far out are we from West Virginia, Henry? About an hour. We're going to spend the night in West Virginia and then keep working our way north and up in Michigan, crisscross all over the place. We're super excited. We've got a full lineup of stories for you leading up to Election Day on Tuesday, Blake.
You know, it was interesting. I know you live in Miami, and I heard you say the leaves are beautiful, and they are. This time of year, I've got 2 routes that I go into work, one a little shorter, one a little longer. I've been taking the longer one just so you can see the leaves. It's that time of year here in this part of the world.
Yeah. Yeah, it's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. And you mentioned Miami. Henry's also from Miami, and he's a Miami driver. So if you see us out on the road in this RV, you better look out. And you know what that means.
Buckle up, brother. Brian Enton, see you tomorrow. Thanks, guys. Brian out on the road for us tonight. Brian, thank you. All right, still much more ahead tonight here on the Hill, including that big military presence in the Caribbean and Venezuela. The president says it is working. But are the drug cartels really the end game here? The president's former ambassador to Venezuela with us on the other side. Plus, Election Day just 6 days away in New York City, and there is a new poll out tonight. Is the race shrinking between Mamdani and Cuomo? When the Hill returns. 6:30 here in Washington tonight, just a few hours away from a highly anticipated meeting between President Trump and the Chinese leader Xi Jinping in South Korea, 7:30 in the morning there in Seoul. It comes amid escalating trade tensions and the president's war on drug traffickers. And that meeting could be a long one. The president caught on a hot mic talking to leaders at a dinner hosted by the South Korean president. Watch.
You'd be heading home tomorrow? Head home tomorrow?
I think they're meeting with President Xi tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
And then I go home. 3-hour meeting, 3-4 hours.
The president now finalizing a trade deal, by the way, with South Korea. Includes a $350 billion investment into the U.S. in exchange for lower tariffs. Our Kelly Meyer following it all tonight, live over at the White House. Hello, Kelly.
Hey there, Blake. Yeah, President Trump gearing up for that face-to-face meeting with China's Xi Jinping, which he says is going to, quote, work out well for everybody. The president is touting a successful trip so far from Malaysia to Japan to now in South Korea. The president sharing moments ago that South Korea will be building its nuclear-powered submarine in the Philadelphia shipyards. Right here in the good old USA, he says, shipbuilding in our country will soon be making a big comeback. Stay tuned. The president is walking away with that announcement, a nearly finalized trade deal, and a golden crown.
Like to wear it right now.
So President Trump praised it in South Korea, awarded the country's highest decoration you see there, and that crown. South Korea's leader says Trump was given it in recognition of his role as peacemaker. Ahead of President Trump's arrival in South Korea, though, North Korea was test-firing cruise missiles. Blake?
Indeed, they were. And Kelly, the president's war on drugs in the Caribbean continues. And the president kind of made a link today to China, or at least in advance of this China meeting, right?
Yeah, another topic at this meeting, and the president says this is his first question to China's leader tomorrow. So the White House sees China at the center of all of this because Chinese companies are really the primary source of those chemicals used to manufacture the deadly drug. President Trump telling reporters he is considering lowering his tariff on China over fentanyl after this meeting. Listen to this.
I expect to be lowering that because I believe that they're going to help us with the fentanyl situation. They're going to be doing what they can do.
So while the administration sees this as moving from China to Mexico, the network is extending its reach into South America, where the administration is centering its most recent strikes on alleged drug boats carrying what the White House calls illicit drugs into the U.S. The hope here seems to be by tackling the problem at the source, it will help stem the flow of fentanyl into the United States. We also are learning that Kash Patel is set to head to China to discuss the same topic next month. Blake?
Well, setting the stage for us tonight, Kelly Meyer, live at the White House. Kelly, thank you. With us now, he is the former U.S. ambassador to Venezuela. Held that post in both the first Trump and Biden administrations. James Story, in person with us tonight here on the Hill. Nice to see you, sir.
It's great to be here.
We've been talking virtually during all this, the second strike, the third strike, the sixth strike, whenever it was. I think now we're up to 13 strikes. What happens next? Do you have a sense?
Yeah. Well, I have a sense. I mean, we have such a military buildup now in the Caribbean that I anticipate, with the arrival of the Gerald Ford in particular, that the president has an array of options before him. Anything within the 12 nautical mile zone of Venezuela, something on land, maybe a clandestine airstrip, perhaps against a Cartel de los Soles site, or a Tren de Aragua site, or a FARC or an ELN site, or up to and including a complete decapitation of the government if he were to choose to do so.
What do you mean by that?
I mean that he has the resources in theater to be able to take out the Air Force, the Navy, the surface-to-air batteries, and the central power of the Maduro regime, were he to choose to do so.
Here's one of the things that I've noted. The president and the White House have normally said all options are on the table, right? Are you going to do blah, 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 whatever it is? Not even Venezuela, because they haven't. This is different. He's been much more direct, basically talking about covert CIA operations that he's greenlit, and he's not backing off the possibility of land strikes.
Well, this is true. I mean, in the first Trump administration, he said all options are on the table. Right. And I would submit that the options are out the front door. They're right off the coast.
Okay.
Right.
Here's the thing. We've heard from the president for 10 years now that the drugs come from Mexico. right? And we know that drugs come from all over. And now that we're hearing from him, we're doing this because of these are drug boats, got to blow them up. And that's part of the argument. I'm also looking at, Ambassador, Venezuela sitting on the largest oil reserve of anyone in the world.
Right.
And we're trying to end a war in Russia by choking off the oil. There's an oil component with China as well that the president is making a play there. Do you think there's a coincidence here that the president is taking these actions against a nation that has the largest oil reserves anywhere on planet Earth?
Well, I think that there are a number of reasons why the president is making the decisions he's taking now, or perhaps contemplating those decisions. One, Maduro lost an election last year. The whole world knows it. Two, he commits human rights violations and crimes against humanity. Three, there's an outmigration of nearly 9 million Venezuelans that is destabilizing to the region. Four, they're a safe haven for criminality and illegality, and they're in bed with our strategic competitors. It just so happens they also happen to have the world's largest oil supplies and the critical minerals that are going to fuel the 21st century economy.
Rick Scott is a senator from Florida. He said on 60 Minutes, which, by the way, you were featured in over the weekend, he said this, and then I want to get your reaction on the other side.
Sure.
If I was Maduro, I'd head to Russia or China right now.
Because?
His days are numbered. Something's going to happen. Whether it's internal or external, I think something's going to happen.
Two things on that. One, do you think he's spot on there?
I definitely think something is going to happen. I concur. Were I Maduro, I would be looking for an exit, yes.
And then he went on to say, he was asked, what do you think Maduro signals to the other socialist regimes in the area? And he said, point blank, it'll be the end of Cuba. What does he mean by that?
Well, Cuba has turned Venezuela into a colony, to be quite honest with you. Cuba exists and lives off of free oil, diesel, and other hydrocarbons that come from Venezuela. Venezuelans are bereft of these things. They go to Cuba for free. And there are a number of people in Washington who view Havana through the lens of Caracas.
Did he kind of say the quiet part out loud there? There's a bigger play here of getting rid of these, of turning over, however you want to describe it, these socialist regimes in the Caribbean in our backyard?
I certainly think that the senator perhaps believes, and many people believe, that by Venezuela, restoring democracy in Venezuela, restoring justice and liberty in Venezuela will have a positive effect across the region. Fewer migrants, less criminality, fewer drugs. In addition, it will choke off a lifeline that Cuba has been receiving for quite some time.
I could talk to you all night about this. James Story is the former ambassador to Venezuela, with us live tonight here on The Hill. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you so much.
We'll talk again soon. All right, still to come. Other side, and just out late this afternoon, perhaps the final poll, or at least one of the really big ones that we await in the New York City mayoral election. Is Zohran Mamdani's lead shrinking? Or does the Democratic Socialist have it in the bag? We'll show you the new numbers out tonight. Plus, there's a saying that there are no true friends in politics. Well, is there a budding bromance in the Trump administration? Will that be put to the test? Who Vice President Vance said is his best friend? Oh, but we are a long ways away from Iowa when we return.
NewsNation and Decision Desk HQ out in front.
Accurate election results faster than the other networks.
NewsNation once again has called it first.
The difference is DDHQ.
No one has been close to NewsNation because of DDHQ.
Coverage begins Tuesday at 7/6 Central on NewsNation.
In the Big Apple, but the impact of the results of the race for mayor could have consequences that extend well past the 5 boroughs. Early voting has already started, but in what could be one of the last major poll before New Yorkers actually take to the polls on Election Day, Zohran Mamdani still holds a strong lead over Andrew Cuomo, 10 points there. But it's a lead that's been somewhat dwindling since Eric Adams suspended his campaign, the current mayor. His lead in the same poll was 13 almost 3 weeks ago. But some in New York are already hinting at steps that they're going to take if and when Mayor Mamdani becomes a reality. The Republican county, the county executive there in Nassau, who's a Republican, Bruce Blakeman, has pledged to hire more police officers and promised full collaboration with ICE if there's a Mayor Mamdani. He said this to Laura Ingle.
If Mamdani wins New York City, you are proactively making plans.
Well, he's made some very disturbing comments that Unfortunately, if he does win, it'll be part of his policy, like defunding the police. I'm hoping that he does not win because he's a very troubling person. He's a socialist, which is totally antithetical to American values.
And of course, possibilities of actions by President Trump during a Mamdani administration, according to the president himself, range from sending in the National Guard to potentially withholding federal funds. Full panel here with me now. Aaron McGuire is a Republican strategist. Back for double duty, Lindsey Granger, co-host of Rising on the Hill. Speaking of double duty, back with me again, Chris Steyerwalt, host of The Hill Sunday, senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, and she is the White House reporter for The Hill. Host of The Hill's America's What's America Thinking? Julia Manchester with us tonight. Hello to you all. I got the title backwards. You want to say it for me?
What's America Thinking?
There we go.
To be honest, we're not. It's on hiatus. We haven't done it in a bit.
That's a White House correspondent.
Yes.
I found what happened out there in Nassau fascinating. Is that what we're going to start to see? Because obviously, New York City, the 5 boroughs, the Big Apple, Manhattan, all that. But are you going to start to see some areas, Aaron, outside say, okay, if this happens, then that?
Well, you've already seen it from Democrats in California, right? Donald Trump won, and they immediately went into emergency session to try and shore up California to make sure it would be okay when Donald Trump became president. Now, they did that during the California wildfires, and instead of addressing the wildfires, went pure politics. This is strictly related to law enforcement efforts and making sure that the municipality is cooperating with federal authorities. Now, I think that that is a good thing. I think that if somebody has an ICE detainer and has been adjudicated and needs to continue in that process, that yes, they should be held and you should not be allowing those people out. I think this is a good first step because making communities safer is a good thing when the man who is likely going to become the mayor of New York City is out there lambasting police, and the apology but is not good enough for the NYPD.
So I guess Aaron's saying, well, Democrats kind of did something similar.
Yeah, Blakeman's also running for re-election. He has an election coming up in a couple of days, so let's just not bury the lead here. He's trying to make sure he's Trump aligned so that he can get that role, and so that's important to note. But also, it's, you know, he has something online. In February, they talked about working directly with the federal government so that they can help ICE agents. He actually assigned 10 detectives to work directly with ICE, and so now his opponent is saying, I'm going to remove that entire situation that you set up in February and make that go away. So he's just trying to protect his spot there and see where Nassau County lies. I grew up in Long Island, so I know that Nassau County and Suffolk County can lean Republican, but I think it's on the fence about how much has gotten done and how they'll vote this time.
So one of the fascinating things, Julia and Chris, the Republicans are doing in this town is basically tying whatever under the sun to Zohran Mamdani. Here is just a little bit of it today.
Mamdani it looks like he's going to win and be the mayor of New York City, and Hakeem Jeffries came out and endorsed him. That's all you need to know.
They'd rather run in circles. Why? In order to attain political leverage and score points with the radical Mamdani.
So they're tying a lot to him right now.
Absolutely. I think you're going to see it in a few races. Number one, obviously in the governor's race in New York State. We know that Elise Stefanik hasn't officially announced she is jumping in. It sure seems like it, but she says she will make an announcement after the mayoral election. So I think that tells you what you need to know there. But I would really pay attention to how this plays in House races, not just in New York, but also outside of New York. In New York, actually, speaking of Long Island, you had Congressman Tom Suozzi, a Democrat, come out today and say he's endorsing Cuomo. You have Laura Gillen, also from Long Island, who has very much distanced herself from Mamdani. But you have the House Republican Campaign Committee essentially trying to tie not only these New York Democrats to Mamdani, but make Mamdani sort of the face of House Democrats going forward, and using Jeffries' endorsement to do that.
People who watch this show know who Zohran Mamdani is. Yep. That's true. And I would imagine that his national name identification recognition among American voters might be as high as 10% now.
You think that's it?
Really? No, they pulled it. The NRCC, his name recognition sits around 80 right now.
Not to take anything away from the. Not to take anything away. Not to take anything away.
I think 10% is probably a little low.
Okay, let's just say
somewhere between 80 and 10.
Over the years, people have been able to turn Nancy Pelosi into a tool to use against other Democrats in House races. Over the years, people have been able to turn Mitch McConnell into a tool to use against Republicans in House races. It can happen. The idea that Zohran Mamdani is going to be a cure-all for the what ails the Republican Party at this point, he's just New York's weird. I like New York fine, but
it's
New York...
a great state full of great football teams, namely the one that plays there.
Let's not get carried away there. I don't know if the NRCC pulled that, but I'm pretty sure I'd say they should. I'm sure they should. I'm just saying the ability of Republicans to leverage up Mamdani. Yes, it'll do harm to Democrats that there's an avowed socialist out doing it, but there's limits.
But I was going to say, don't you think there's a real sleight of hand here by constantly calling him a socialist and not actually pointing to the policies and the ways that you want to bring down wages, talk about housing? Like, Republicans are missing an opportunity to do the same thing that President Trump did, is talk about the issues that voters really care about now that we're 9 months into Trump's economy and nothing much has changed.
Are you suggesting that his critics are not giving him the benefit of the doubt, a fair hearing of his ideas? I don't know. I don't know.
Meantime, there have been rumblings as of late as to what circumstances could potentially lead to a third term for President Trump come 2028, an idea that he may have put to bed himself today.
It's a very interesting thing. I have the best numbers for any president in many years, any president. And I would say that if you read it, it's pretty clear I'm not allowed to run.
All right, there you have it. Another potential option, at least for the Republican side, is for the power players within the administration on the same ticket. J.D. Vance, the VP, the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, perhaps. Here's what Vance said about Rubio today.
Marco is my best friend in the administration. He and I work a lot together.
Right.
And we really do, I think, a lot of the good work that we've been able to do as an administration is because we're all able to work together.
J.D. Vance wants you to know that Marco Rubio is his best friend, Aaron. Why?
Well, because Marco Rubio holds 78,000 jobs in this administration.
Yes,
and I think he might be getting looked at for the LSU head football coach job.
I'm getting there at the end of the show. Did you see what happened in Louisiana today?
I'm sure
not
did.
joking. That's the way I'm ending the show.
Oh, yeah, I'm on top of it.
Yeah.
But I can tell you this much. At this point, they are working so closely together. They were both senators at the same time. They have a history together. So them getting along and being friends to accomplish the same goal, I mean, that's exactly what you want.
That's over the top. Is that over the top?
No, I think absolutely. I mean, listen, you work with people, you end up becoming closer friends with people that you work with every day. That's the Secretary of State. This is a very geopolitically aggressive administration.
Until it's time to compete for the same role, right?
But you know what? But that's
we're close, but when we're going for this, which one of them is going to be vice president? J.D. Vance is not going to be a career vice president.
I don't think either will be
and
vice
Rubio
president,
ran for president and is 13 years older than him. He's not going to accept that second. I don't think he's going to accept that vaccine. They're not going to.
Rubio runs if Vance.
I think there's going to be plenty that goes on behind the scenes that nobody will know about, but I cannot imagine a world where the two end up on the same ticket. But listen, I'm not one of those people who says I'll eat my tie if I don't end up getting this right. So in politics, all's fair.
Would you wear a tie?
I could make it very cool.
What'd you make of what you heard there?
Look, I think it's very hard to arrange a marriage in politics. And we are years out from 2028. We don't know practically where the Republican Party will be at that point. And, you know, if you go back to 2016, actually, I remember when Marco Rubio was asked by the Cruz campaign to form a unity ticket to take on Donald Trump. And at the time, Marco Rubio said, that seems a little house of cards. So I think it's interesting that President Trump is trying to insert himself into this process. And critics are saying, look, maybe that's a little undemocratic. So we'll see. And also another point is, logistically, I guess I just have a question of how does this work out? Because no one is running to be vice president. They want to be top.
Take me home, doctor.
Look, you tell me what Donald Trump's approval rating is going to be at this time in 2027, the beginning of 2028. We'll know a lot more. So right now, the president is unpopular, but not in a profound way. He's like 42% favorable, 55, 56% unfavorable. He's pretty far underwater, but that's pretty normal for Donald Trump. This is sort of par for the course for him. Donald Trump has high approval. If he's at back over 50%, as he was for a brief period of time, maybe J.D. Vance is the guy. Right. Donald Trump's sucking wind at 35. J.D. Vance ain't the guy, right? Like, so we'll have to see how it goes.
All right, we'll leave it there. Thank y'all. Appreciate it. By the way, tune in Tuesday for NewsNation special night coverage here on NewsNation. A lot of awesome, amazing, talented, wonderfully gifted people there for Tuesday night. I'm not there because I'll be in the morning, Tuesday and Wednesday with you. So make sure you tune in to the morning show as well. All right, still to come tonight here on the Hill. The governor, as I mentioned to Aaron, I promise you that I'm talking about this. Did you hear what the Louisiana governor said today about the big job in his state and Donald Trump? Other side. Football down south, and it got a little heated in the state of Louisiana today. The governor, Jeff Landry, unloading on LSU's athletic director during a press conference after that school fired Brian Kelly as its head football coach over the weekend. Watch.
I can tell you right now, Scott Woodward is not selecting the next coach. Hell, I'll let Donald Trump select it before I let him do it.
How about that? I'll let the president do it instead. Now, Kelly is owed $54 million. Before the firing, the governor posted on social media that if LSU plays the way that they have this year, they shouldn't raise ticket prices next year. Now, get this. Yahoo Sports reports that the decision to fire Kelly over the weekend then took place inside the governor's mansion. Now, the world of college football is undergoing major upheaval, as you know, but I wonder if we just entered some new territory here. Are we about to get to a place where decisions on the head football coach start running through the governor's mansion? Elizabeth Vargas reports still to come here on News Nation. She will be joined by Senator Bill Cassidy on his plan to honor Charlie Kirk with a statue. He will also discuss his proposal to fund SNAP benefits during the government shutdown that's coming up just seconds away right here on News Nation. I thank you so much for watching us tonight here on the Hill. It is a big night for this president, for this administration, as East meets West. President Trump in Asia, hours away from his face-to-face meeting with Xi Jinping.